It's page 3 of the Unit 7 review. Number 16. A triangle has angles with ratio 6, 9, 5. Or 6 to 9 to 5. Find the length of the smallest angle measure. Alright, so a situation like this, you're talking about the angles of a triangle, of one triangle, so you're not comparing it to another triangle. And you know the total, because we're talking about angles of a triangle, so we know the total is 180 degrees, because that's how many degrees are in a triangle. And we have this ratio. I like to put it in numerical order, so I'm going to change this around to 5 to 6 to 9. And I can make an equation out of this. So I have something representing 3 angles, and I have a total of the angles. All I'm missing to solve is an x, so I'm going to give each one of these an x. 5x plus 6x plus 9x, and it equals 180. So if we add it up, then we get 20x, right? Yeah. 20x equals 180. Divide by 20. So x equals 9. So we found out that x is 9, but that's not what the question is asking. The question is asking the length of the smallest angle measure. So in the equation that we created, the smallest angle measure is 5x, because 5 is the smallest number. It's representing the smallest side. So if we take this x is 9 and plug it in, right there for x, then we get 5 times x equals, and we just said that x was 9, so that means 45 degrees. So the smallest angle must be 45 degrees. So this kind of problem is either going to be angles of a triangle or perimeter of something. So number 15, the last one was a perimeter, and then there's the angles of a triangle. All right, number 17 says to use a proportion to solve for xz. So if you have worked through this entire review, then you know how to set up a proportion, or I doubt you've made it this far. Proportion, this whole unit's about using proportions. That's 2 ratios that are equal to each other. And I want to solve for xz. Where is xz? Here's x, there's z. Right there. All right, so I'm going to put another letter. I'm going to use a B. We're going to solve for B, because I like to have something there. You can set up this proportion in 2 different ways. You can compare those pieces to these pieces, or I like to compare one triangle to the other triangle. Either way, you're going to get the same answer. It doesn't matter. Whichever way makes more sense to you, but they both work, as long as you're consistent with how you set them up. All right, so I'm going to set this up as 9 over 6, the left triangle, to the right triangle. Since I put 9 in the numerator, the corresponding piece to 9 is 12. So since I put 9 in the numerator, I have to put 12 in the numerator. I do have to match them. And then, so that puts b in the denominator. You can use any type, you never have to solve for x. You can use any letter you want to. It's just representing the missing piece. All right, so now now I'm going to do the cross product. So I have 9b equals 6 times 12. And 6 times 12 is 72. So 9b equals 72. And then I divide by 9. And b equals 8. And that is the missing side piece. Length of xz, which equals x z. So xz equals 8. Okay, number 18. Another proportion problem. Find the missing length. And the missing length is side DJ. Since there's not an x in this problem, I'm just going to call it x. Alright, so there's a few different ways we could solve this problem. I mean, just because, so it does kind of make it hard for me to explain how to do this in case you are thinking of doing it one way and I do it a different way, because there are multiple ways to solve these problems. I think for this particular problem, the easiest way to solve would be to set up a ratio there and a ratio here, because I can easily find the length of CK. And then I just have one proportion to solve for. So first thing I need to do is find out what the length of CK is. I see the total length of LK is 132. And if I subtract LC, 24, then it tells me it's 108. So this side is 108. And now I can set up a proportion. A ratio equals a ratio. And it doesn't matter where I start. If I start with 28, and I put 28 on top, 28 over 24. Then on the next one, I'm going to start with x and do x over 108. I could have done 24 over 28 equals 108 over x. It means the same thing. So next is the cross product. So I multiply what the crisscrosses. So I have 24x equals 28 times 108, which is 3,024. And then I'm going to divide by 24. So x equals 126. And that is DJ, the missing piece. And always make sure it makes sense. So if I have in the little triangle side length 28, 24, and then the supplementary piece is 108 and x, if this is 126, yeah, that makes sense. 28 is just a little bit bigger than 24, and 126 is not much bigger than 108, so it makes sense. But it's always a good idea to check to make sure that it makes sense. All right. Number 19. Solve for x. All right, x is part of a side. And we have a similarity statement, which can be really helpful in these triangles that are twisted like this. At least in my mind it's twisted, the crisscross shape. All right, so if 10x plus 3, I'm solving for x, so I need to know that, is ln. Here's L, N. I need to make sure I get the piece that matches up with it. That would be LC. The two outside letters and the two outside letters. So 54. Those two match. They go together. They're the corresponding pieces. And then I have numbers on two other pieces. ML and BL. All right, so I have, and it doesn't matter. Again, you can set it up whichever way it makes more sense to you. You can have 54 over 10x plus 3 equals 70 over 60. The red together as a ratio and the blue together as a ratio. Go ahead and set it up like that. 54 over 10x plus 3. And that equals, all right, this part is important. 54, I put in the numerator. That was from the bottom triangle. So 60 needs to be in the numerator because that's also in the bottom triangle. It's just the blue one from the bottom. And the blue one from the top triangle is 70. So I set it up like that. I could have said 54 over 60. I could have gone the other direction with it and said 54 over 60 and 70 over 10x plus 3. That would have been fine too. It's still a proportion. So you just do whichever way it works for you. I did it this way, red as a ratio equals blue as a ratio. All right, so now that I've done that, I'm going to do the cross product. So crisscross multiply. 54 times 70, so that's going to be pretty big, equals 60 times 10x plus 3. All right, so 54 times 70 is 3,780. And that equals, so here I'm going to distribute the 60 to both parts inside parentheses. So 60 times 10, I completely missed that 10 whenever I was doing this on my paper, is 600 x plus 180. Okay. So I want x by itself, so I'm going to subtract 180. Zero, zero, 6. 3,600 equals 600x. It's big numbers, but it's okay. I divide by 600. And it's just 6. Because the zeros cancel. 36 divided by 6 is 6. Equals x. And that's all I needed was x. It didn't ask for the length, it just asked for x. Okay. Now look at number 20. Most of these problems on the review are proportions. Number 20 is one of them that is not a proportion. Segment AB with endpoints A at 3,2 and B at 7,5 is dilated by a scale factor of 3. Find the coordinates of A prime and B prime. Is it a reduction or an enlargement? All right. So I have a line that you can plot this if you want to. You don't have to. I'm starting at A and going to A prime. I have a scale factor of 3. So really I'm just finding the coordinates of A prime and B prime. So I take the scale factor of 3 and I'm going to apply it to each one. All right, so A is at 3,2 and B is at 7,5. And I want to find A prime and B prime. I have the scale factor is 3. So a scale factor of 3, is this going to be a reduction or an enlargement? An enlargement, right? Because it say times 3. If I say times 3, is it going to get bigger or smaller? Bigger, yeah. So you just take both the values times 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 3 is 6. And I do the same thing with the other ones. Times 3. 7 times 3 is 21. 5 times 3 is 15. That's it. Oh, an enlargement. We already said that. That's all you had to do for that one. Find the missing length. Okay. Let's see, missing length is side RS. Since there's no other x's in this problem, I'm going to call that x. R to S is the second two letters of the triangle in the similarity statement. So GF is what matches. It doesn't mean that it's 8. It just means that the 8 corresponds to the X. And I can see that TS corresponds to TF. TS and TF. So this means I have a proportion that I can set up. I'm going to do red with red and blue with blue. I could do one triangle, compare it to the other triangle. It doesn't matter. I'm going to do red with red, so I'll put X on top and 8 on bottom, and blue. Since the X came from the top triangle, the 42 is from the top triangle, and I'm going to put them both in the numerator. And then the 14 is in the denominator. And then I'm just doing the cross product. So I have 14x equals 8 times 42, which is 336. And then divide by 14. Which is 24. So x equals 24, and that is the missing side length RS. We're just using proportions to solve for missing pieces. It all comes down to setting up the proportion correctly. And the last one, number 22, again, we have a solve for x problem. And we have a similarity statement. So, where's x? There it is. X is inside JL. And JL, it matches AC. So those two are going to go together. 20 over 2x minus 6. Since I know I'm going to put the reds together. And then, what else do I have? 40 is CB is the first two letters, or is it going to go with LK? Here's CB is 40. And LK is 24. And there's a proportion. Once you get the proportion, you get the cross product. $20 times 24 is going to give me 480. And that's going to equal 40 times 2x minus 6. So in this one we do have to distribute the 40 to both parts inside the parentheses. So we have 480 equals 80x minus 240, negative 6 times 40. All right, I'm going to keep solving for x. So I'm going to add 240. Ooh. 720 equals 80x. And then last, divide it by 80. So if I cancel the zeros, 72 divided by 8 is 9. So x is 9. And that's the end of the review.